Become the best version of yourself at work, at home, and everywhere in between. You're listening to All We Know About the Stuff We Know. Are you passionate about personal development? An aspiring leader aiming to make an impact? Do you wish to be more content in your personal life? You're in the right place. All We Know About the Stuff We Know is a podcast presented by Focus Tools and hosted by Ashley Martin and Dave Osgood. It is your go-to resource for leadership, team performance, and personal growth. Each episode features real-life stories infused with timeless wisdom and humor from Ash and Dave, seasoned trainers who have guided thousands of people to become more effective on the job and at home. We'll help you avoid common pitfalls in communication and decision-making. We'll raise your awareness about why you do the things you do. And we'll give you simple strategies to help you elevate your relationships, achieve outstanding results, and live a more fulfilling life. If you're ready to grow professionally, personally, and beyond, this podcast is for you. This is All We Know About the Stuff We Know. Okay, so you just said that you have 5 things about decisions that people need to know.
In no particular order.
No particular order.
Right.
Number 1.
Yeah, you really need to know, what kind of a decision am I facing? Whether it's a work decision or a personal decision, is it a type 1 or a type 2 decision? Because they require different kinds of approaches. Type 1 decisions are decisions that are reversible, basically. The cost in time, money, stress, pain to reverse the decision is doable. So, these are the lower to mid priority decisions. Even some of the more important decisions, especially at work. Hey, should we move forward with this project? Hey, should we partner with this company? If those decisions, if you try them and they don't work out, if you can recover relatively easily from them and switch course and do a reset, then it's a type 1 decision and you shouldn't agonize over it. You should take your best shot and go. And those are decisions, at least in business, then that should be made further down in the organization as long as they're given permission to do that. And so that's part of the speed part. Like, you know what, let's get on with things. A good decision now is better than a great decision later.
Right. So a type 1 decision would be really good for people who are on the right side of the disc circle. Maybe the I or the S. No, the bottom. Your S's and your C's who are going to be more slower, more reluctant to change. So because this fear of failure is pretty low and you could flex and bounce back relatively easy, it would be great for those types of disc styles or those types of personalities to start flexing your muscle with the tiny decisions.
Yep, with not even tiny, but kind of the tiny to mid-weight decisions.
Got it.
Because again, what would be a personal decision?
Should I paint the cabinets green or leave them white?
There you go. Perfect decision. Should I leave them the way they are or try a new color? Well, you know what? If you are the kind of style that you couldn't handle failure, like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Then what am I going to do?
Well, let me tell you, I'll spiral because one, it takes a lot of time to paint these cabinets. So it's going to take me a few days and a few hours. And then if I don't like it, if the sun rises and like these cabinets are a different color because I painted them at night and I hate it, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go back to the hardware store. I'm going to have to remix and paint. I need to pick some more samples and test them all out on the wall. And it delays the decision making because I want to get it right. And it's annoying.
Yep. So then you'd say, okay, what is the cost to pivot? What's the cost to reverse this decision? Not just money, but time, emotional stress, that kind of thing. And if you're okay with that, or if you can mitigate that somehow, like, well, instead of painting the whole kitchen, maybe I just choose one cabinet and try it and see. Then go do it because you've got, the time and pain to reverse the decision is you can handle it, right? Yeah. So versus type 2 decisions where the cost in terms of time, money, pain, stress is huge and you may not be able to undo that decision, then those are the decisions where you really got to get them right. And you really got to take your time, and you really got to find experts if you need experts to help with the content. You have to have a process that you can follow to make sure you're going to get the best outcome possible for your decision. And those are the decisions where it does pay to take a little bit more time to get it right the first time, because they're either irreversible or the cost is so high you don't even want to face having to do a pivot or a reset.
So I'm thinking personally, buying a house, getting a divorce, leaving a job, and you're thinking corporately, what are these types of decisions?
Corporately, it could be giving the go on a product launch.
Okay.
That's costing huge amounts of time and money. Now, most product development efforts have lots of gates that need to go through so that you're not making that decision all at once. It could be a merger decision, a big merger decision. It could be hiring a key C-suite executive, that kind of thing. So those are the high value, high consequence, but high potential benefit kinds of decisions out there.
I love it. Even like just separating that makes it more clear to me and makes me realize I don't have to fret over this. Like even deciding to paint something green, my friend Dina was like, you could always paint it back white if you don't like it.
Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Okay.
What am I doing to myself?
Yeah, exactly. And so, especially for personal decisions, you can give yourself permission, and you probably won't like this term. You can give yourself permission to fail, because the cost of failure is no big deal.
Virgo,
Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist. I don't want to get anything wrong.
Or the cost of, let's say it this way, not the cost of failure, but the cost of having to do a 2.0. I did 1.0. I painted my cabinets green. Well, you know what? I can do better. Let's go to 2.0. Now that's just reframing it as an evolution rather than a failure and a reset. But however you frame it, it's not a giant deal to reverse that decision.
Right. And you're talking in terms of costs. Like I think of like the cost of the internal struggle to my emotions, to my mindset. The longer we let it all continue and ruminate without taking action, it's a big one, and we don't recognize it as one, right?
Yeah. In business decisions, the mistake that many companies make, or many individuals inside companies make, is they think they're dealing with type 2 decisions when really they're dealing with type 1 decisions. Really, they're dealing with decisions that can be overcome, or a reset can happen. And so what happens is this great overlap of decisions that sits between type 1 and type 2, they end up morphing into type 2 decisions, which slows everything down to a crawl, because decisions never get made, because people are overanalyzing them, getting too many people involved, getting buried in approvals, all that stuff. And so the organization slows down to a grinding, pace. And, in most companies today, maybe more than ever, speed is just as important as quality in much of what organizations do. So, so when we're talking with companies, then especially for things like decision focus, you want to be applying process in a formal way to those decisions that truly matter. You can apply process in an informal way to almost any decision, because a lot of it's mental, right? Musts and wants and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, whenever things slow down, it's because a lot of people, there's a lot of hands in the fire. There's a lot of, like, maybe one person in this team of group think has a certain opinion and is not going to budge, or they're having so much weight in on the decision process that it's slowing everything else down. Like, how do you get that person on board? How do you collectively come to a team decision where we're all unanimous when one person feels like, I don't want it?
Well, it's interesting, because that really is a great segue into the decision roles process, the rapid roles process, because it could be that the person or people that are slowing down the decision shouldn't have decision-making authority on that decision. They shouldn't have the D, which in rapid, as you know, means D, the decider. Maybe they are I people, RAPID. They're input people. And if they're input people, if they throw up the stop sign, it really shouldn't matter, because they don't have that authority. So having teams get clear on who's assuming what roles is really, really important. We had a deal, Mary was involved in a deal many, many years ago with a team where they were talking about a fairly important team decision, and one guy and they were talking about RIPID, who's got the R for recommendation, who's got the A for agree, which really means veto power, who's got the D, who's the decider, the I means input, and the rapid, the P, that means, I got it out of order. The P means performer, okay, the people who are implementing the decision. Anyway, they were talking about who has the D in this decision, and one of the guys, this is a cross-functional team, one of the guys raised his hand and said, well, that's my decision. And like the other 13 people did one of these. Really? Like, you're kidding me. That's not your decision. And so they had a big discussion about who owns the decision. Was it this department? Was it that part of the organization? Was it this job function? And they really lucked out by having that discussion early in the process, because it allowed them to hammer out, all right, what is your role in this decision? What is my role in this decision? Who else out there can veto this decision or needs to be part of it? And we got to get straight on that right away. So that would be the question I'd ask right away, is like, have you figured out your decision roles? Because if you haven't, then you open yourself up to all those potential issues. Again, more in a business setting, but you can apply that in, talking about rapid roles, you can apply that in a personal setting too. And when we did our remodel in this house, we, as funny as it sounds, we had a discussion up front. Okay, who gets the D on different things, right? So, of course, the piano room, the room that Mary put her piano in, she had the final D on all that. She gave me input, but at the end of the day, it was her decision. Well, you know what? If I didn't like the color of the curtains in that room, I could tell her, but you know what? It was her choice. And it kind of freed us both up to say, all right, you got your input, but we know who owns this decision. And so even in personal decisions, it does pay to get straight on that stuff as early in the process as possible. Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. Can we level up the personal decision of you and your wife deciding the piano room? Can we level up and say, how do you decide to get the remodel? Like, who has the final D on saying yes to the remodel? Like these bigger decisions that cost a lot of money. Maybe it's a type 2 decision in our personal world. And I've had this, and I see it in my discussions in our Facebook groups, where you have a partner where you kind of each maybe want to do something like move across the country, but you don't know the timing. Somebody will be like, I don't want to do that today. And then they'll decide the next day that they do want to move. And then they decide, no, I don't want to move. Like, how do you get your partner on board if you really want to do something and the other person is kind of like,
Well, it's easy. You do it behind their back.
Going anyway. Ask for permission. No way. Ask for forgiveness. That's what we're doing.
Well,
we're moving this ball forward no matter what.
I'm smiling as you're talking about this, because one of the rules of decision rules is in the A in rapid. A stands for agree, and that's really a person who has veto power over the decision. The person that can put up the stop sign and say, I have the authority to stop this decision until I get my needs met. So
needs? We got to talk about their needs?
Well, or
what about my needs, Dave?
Exactly. Needs or wants or objections or desires or whatever it is that's causing them to put up the stop sign. So, and the way it goes for business decisions is that if you have that veto power and you put up the stop sign, then one of the rules of the game is then you must come up with an alternative that's acceptable in the decision, right?
Yes. That's where the ball rolling stops. It's because they would have the veto power, right, but there's no alternative being presented.
Isn't that, where was that quote first coined? With great power comes great responsibility. So the same thing with veto power. If you throw up the stop sign, then you have assumed the responsibility to come up with a viable alternative.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That little nugget is life-changing because it holds them accountable. It holds your counterpart accountable to saying, hey, I have needs too. I understand your needs, and you're going to throw the veto because you feel like your needs aren't being met. That's fair. But let's continue.
We were working with a team from a medical device company many years ago. Team member from regulatory was famous for throwing up the stop sign on things. Well, you can't do that because Well, you can't do that. You can't do that. And so we took that team through the rapid process and said, basically, that rule then became really important. And that if you throw up the stop sign, then you must work with us to find an alternative that works for everybody. Because it's really easy to say no, right? No, you can't. Why? Because I said so and I have veto power. But if the part of that rule is, okay, then you got to dig in and do the work to find an alternative that's acceptable, then everyone wins, and there's much more shared accountability for the outcome. So I suppose you could say in like a remodel, hey, do you want to move forward with the remodel? No, I don't. Stop. All right, well then give me an alternative, because the current situation is not workable because, in example, hey, the wallpaper's peeling off the walls. Hey, you know what, the laundry room is completely unworkable because of this and that. So we got to, give me an alternative, but you can't just say stop. So yeah, so that's the way it should go. Now, whether it goes that way, I don't know. Yeah.
I love it. That is so helpful. I'm so glad we talked about that.
And that was
I'm going to take this into my next partnership or relationship or whatever, where it's like, here's where I found myself personally. Because I was married to a disc style that's on that lower half of the circle who's slow to change, I found myself gravitating to people who were quick decision makers, who could be very direct. But I'm not saying that that's going to be like my perfect partner forever. So I may end up in the same situation again. And it's like, now I know how to handle it better, even in family relationships, even in my next business world or whatever. Like, I can see these types of conversations coming to fruition because we just have different personality styles.
Sure.
That's just the way the world works.
And this is a topic for another discussion, but what you're doing is you're honing and grooming your intuition so that when another situation comes up that either reminds you of a past relationship or situation, you can quickly recall that memory, recall the lessons learned, and deal with them instantly without having to grind over it or having forgotten about it.
Yes. I needed to know this thing that you knew, Dave. Thank you for telling me all that you know about that thing that you knew.
That was just one of the top 5 things that go into this.
I love it. That's a whole podcast episode right there. Thank you.
It's a whole podcast episode.
Wonderful. I told you we're creating content no matter what.
You know what? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So you want to hear the other 4 right now, or do you?
No, hell no. We're going to record that later and we'll dive into number 2.
Yeah, that was a lot to unpack there with just one statement. And some of this stuff is connected. I mean, we'll dive into, like when you talked about styles. Yeah, you gotta have an awareness, especially in personal, even business decisions. You gotta have awareness, self-awareness of what your style tendencies are in the way you approach decisions. Those style tendencies are going to serve you well in a lot of cases, but they're going to get in your way in a lot of other cases.
Yeah. We know it. We've been there. We lived it.
We lived it. Exactly.
Hey everyone, Dave here. Hey, I got a question for you. Do you think you really know how to make great decisions? If you're like me, the answer is yeah, I make great decisions. I've got a good job and I've been at this for a long time, and yeah, I'm a good decision maker. Well, guess what? Think again. Here's the deal. Your brain thinks it's a pro at decision making, when in reality, guess what? Our brains are running on outdated software full of bugs and biases and sneaky habits and stuff. And so that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, 5 Things You Really Need to Know About Making Decisions. We've been at this decision making training game for, 30 years. And what we've discovered is time and time again, there are certain things that people do or don't do that get in the way of making good decisions. So that's really what the book's all about, is if you can boil it down to a few things that we can focus on to make consistently good decisions, even when our brain is, like I said earlier, kind of sneaking its way around us, trying to get in the way of making good decisions, we're going to be better at it. So pick up the book, give it a read. It's a quick read. We didn't go for preachy. We didn't go for theory. We went for practical. So that's what I hope you get from the book. Pick up a copy and see what you think.
All we know about the stuff we know is built for people like you who want to think better, lead better, and connect better at work and beyond. If this show has sparked new ideas or helped you navigate something really challenging in your life, we'd love to connect with you. Follow us on Instagram at The Stuff We Know Show, or get in touch with us on the web at www.focustools.com. allviate.com. Like what you're hearing? Let us know. Leave a review. It takes 30 seconds and makes a huge difference. Your engagement helps more people find us, and it helps us keep bringing you the good stuff. And hey, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up. See you next time for all we know about the stuff we know.